All right, imagine this for a second. A political group gets absolutely crushed in a national election. But then, just 1 year later, they're running the whole country. We're going to unpack exactly how that stunning reversal happened. It sounds like a riddle, right? How on earth do you turn a massive electoral defeat into a total political victory? Well, this isn't some thought experiment. It's exactly what went down in Iraq. And the playbook they used is way more sophisticated than you might think. The timeline here is just wow. It's almost hard to believe. In October 2021, the political coalition of Iran-backed militias suffers a disastrous loss. Fast forward 1 year, and they're the ones forming the government. So let's get into it and break down how they engineered this incredible comeback. Okay, so to really get how they pulled off the win, we've got to start with the loss. A big loss. Let's look at the election itself, the immediate fallout, and the chaotic, violent reaction that came next. The numbers here basically tell the story of a political earthquake. The nationalist cleric Muqtada al-Sadr storms in, grabs a commanding 73 seats, and the Fatah Alliance, that's the main political group for the Iran-backed militias, their power just craters, dropping from 48 seats all the way down to around 20. This wasn't just losing an election, this was a total public smackdown. And here's why that loss was so terrifying for them. Sadr wasn't just playing for points. His whole plan was to build a government with other allies that would completely lock these Iran-backed groups out. And the real kicker? He was openly threatening to dismantle their entire power structure inside the state. So for the militias, this wasn't just a political problem, it was do or die. And this quote, man, it just says it all. This is from one of the most powerful militia leaders, Adi al-Ameri. This isn't some fancy political speech, it's raw. In their heads, they were about to be wiped off the map. So what's their first move? Pure chaos and violence. First, they hit the streets, trying to storm the government buildings. Then, death threats against the Prime Minister. And it all leads up to this. A drone loaded with explosives is launched right at the Prime Minister's house. It was a total, desperate lashing out. But here's the thing. This wasn't the real plan. This was just the noisy part before the real strategy kicked in. So when all that violence and chaos failed to get them what they wanted, a new plan clicks into place. A much, much smarter one, reportedly managed by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. This was the real playbook. The secret sauce to this whole comeback? One word, lawfare. Basically, they put down the guns and picked up the law books. They turned judges in courtrooms into their new weapons. It was a brilliant move, and it was absolutely devastating. So how'd they do it? It's pretty clever, actually. They used Iraq's top court, which was led by a judge who, let's just say, was very friendly to their cause. And then comes the killer move, the masterstroke. The court just changes the rules of the game. Out of the blue, they declare that you now need a 2/3 majority to form a government. And just like that, everything changed. Before, Sadr had what he needed, 165 seats, a simple majority, no problem. But after this one ruling, boom, the finish line gets moved all the way to 218 seats. This made it mathematically impossible for him to form a government without them. They went from being the losers to being the kingmakers. Just like that. Okay, so Sadr is completely boxed in, right? Frustrated, cornered, he makes this huge, catastrophic mistake. As a massive protest move, he orders all 73 of his winning MPs to just quit. But, and this is a huge but, there's this weird little quirk in Iraqi law. Their seats don't just disappear. They go to the runner-ups. And who are the runner-ups? You guessed it, the exact same militias he had just beaten. He literally handed them the win. Game, set, match. So now they're in charge. Their opponents are out of the picture. And what's the first thing they do? They go straight for the jugular, Iraq's entire security system. They were going to make sure a challenge like this never, ever happened again. And they didn't waste any time. They launched this methodical purge, out with anyone seen as pro-Western, in with their own guys in the most sensitive jobs. We're talking the big ones, top intelligence, the elite special forces, and even control over who comes in and out of the country at airports and border crossings. And if you want to see just how complete this takeover was, get a load of this. Let's take Iraq's best military force, the Counterterrorism Command, the guys the US trained. A mind-blowing 83% of their new recruits were handpicked by the militia factions. I mean, some of these are groups the US calls terrorist organizations. They basically swallowed the entire force from the inside out. And that's not all. While they're taking over the official state security forces, they're also building up their own private army, the Popular Mobilization Forces, or PMF. And the blueprint they're using? It looks an awful lot like Iran's Revolutionary Guard. The goal is to create this super powerful, totally unaccountable army that answers to them and only them.
Okay, so this wasn't just a power grab for security. Oh no, this was also about money. A lot of money. One of the biggest economic prizes in the whole region. Let's follow the cash.
One of the first things they do in power, they pass the biggest budget in Iraq's history. We're talking $152 billion a year. That's a B. And now they hold the purse strings. And you've got to remember where that money comes from. Iraq is an oil superpower, number 5 in the entire world. So when you control the state, you control the oil. And when you control the oil, well, you pretty much control everything. So how are they cashing in? Well, a few ways. They're grabbing all the government ministry jobs and contracts they can. They're getting their hands deep into the oil industry, which, remember, brings in 85% of the country's income. And then there's this new thing, the Muhandis General Company. It's this giant new corporation that they own, and right off the bat, it was just handed 1.2 million acres of state land for free. Unbelievable. All right, so let's pull back for a second. We've got the political win, the security forces in their pocket, and a fire hose of cash. What's the endgame here? What does all this power actually create? Now, you might think, okay, they're in charge now, they've got responsibilities, maybe they'll calm down, become more pragmatic. Well, all the evidence we're seeing points in the complete opposite direction. Gaining control of the state hasn't moderated them. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. And you don't have to look far to see it. Since the latest crisis in Gaza kicked off, dozens of attacks on U.S. forces in the region are being claimed, not by a bunch of different little groups, but all under one banner, the Islamic resistance in Iraq. What that tells you is that they're more coordinated than ever, and they're using the resources of the state they now control to fuel their fight. And that leaves us with a really big, really tough question. In this new Iraq, where a network of militias controls the country's money, its spies, and its soldiers, where does the militia end and the actual state begin? The line has gotten so blurry, it might not even be there anymore. And that redefines the very nature of power, not just for Iraq, but for the entire region.